Voice hearing can have many forms. You can hear just one voice, but there can also be more voices at the same time. The voices can be experienced as coming from the inside or outside of your head. You can hear different languages, even ones you don't know. It can vary from one-time voice hearing to hearing it every day, many times, all day long. The voices can sound familiar or unfamiliar, and they can comment on your thoughts, feelings, behavior, and current situation. They can comment on your very private thoughts and feelings as well, so it can feel like nothing's private anymore. And the voices have different characters. They can be negative and criticizing, telling you bad things and putting you down, but they can also be positive, nice, and helpful. So, voice hearing can be both a good and a bad experience. It's not always negative. There are certain circumstances that can be pointed out in which people more often start hearing voices. People hear voices before falling asleep, while they're dreaming, and after waking up. Children often have imaginary friends. Some of them actually hear their friends and keep on hearing them when they've grown up. During the mourning process, people often hear voices of the ones they have lost. Traumatic experiences, stress and anxiety can be conditions in which voice hearing occurs. For example, illness, abuse, violence, and hunger. Circumstances like extreme deprivation and isolation can also cause voice hearing. For example, if you are in a room without sound or light, everyone will start hearing voices at some point. Isolation rooms can be an example of that. Also, hypnosis, near-death experiences, and psychedelic experiences. Creative inspiration, like a composer who can hear the music he's writing in his head even before he's played it. Sometimes, when people have important life-changing questions or problems, they can hear a guiding voice, which tells them what to do. This is what we call the call of vocation. And then there are certain medical situations, like epilepsy, deafness, and side effects from certain medicines that can trigger voice hearing. When you start hearing voices, it has a big impact on your life. Because you hear things that weren't there before. So, now what? The reaction you get is composed of two sides. The emotional side and the rational or cognitive side. The emotional side has to do with the feelings you get when you hear voices. You feel all sorts of things, and you want to deal with them. You can experience negative feelings, such as fear. When you experience this fear, you have two choices. Either you fight it, or you flee from the voices. The feelings can also be positive, when the voices are helpful, inspiring, friendly, and interesting. The rational or cognitive side is different. This side of the reaction is fixed on understanding. You want to know more about them. Where are they coming from? Is what they are telling you real, or is it your subconscious that's trying to tell you something? It can change your entire worldview. Because, after all, you hear voices that no one else can hear. What does that mean to you? But also, what does that mean for the ideas you have about the world you live in? If you hear voices, does that mean that other things are real as well? Like aliens, ghosts, spirits, telepathy, God? Anyway, it's a normal reaction if you start to talk about the voices you hear. This plays a big part in the acceptance and coping with your voices. On www.intervoiceonline.org, you can find more information about this. The emotional and cognitive combined can mean you have to rediscover yourself. This rediscovering happens because you are now suddenly someone who hears voices, and you will have to adjust the image you have of yourself because of this. This can be a very uncertain and scary period in your life. However, you are still you, with something extra. There are two general explanations when it comes to voice hearing. On one hand, there is the scientific view, that sees it as a disorder of the brain. In science, it is believed that people who hear voices are dealing with overactive brain areas that are caused by a chemical imbalance. That is the reason they treat voice hearing with medicine. There are also the spiritual traditions, and they generally think that the voices come from outside the person and that is the spiritual experience. There are various spiritual explanations as to why people hear voices. For example, spirits, angels, or demons. The explanations are different in various cultures and moments in time. There is scientific proof that voice hearers actually hear something. There are two brain areas that are most consistently activated while hearing voices: the right inferior frontal lobe and the right superior temporal lobe. It's remarkable that these right variants of the linguistic areas are activated because, under normal circumstances and for 95% of the people, it's the part for speech in the left area. The medial surface, which is involved as it comes to episodic memory, reflections upon itself, and aspects of consciousness, is also activated while voice hearing. This explains why the voices often give judgment on the current situation. The medication, most often antipsychotics, suppress the hallucinations and correct the behavior of the brain. These medications don't solve the problem, but they can help you stabilize and calm down. Our brain has an enormous capacity to adapt. It can make new connections or change the chemical imbalance to a chemical balance. It can adapt to the voices too. Once you learn how to cope, there is no more need for medication. In previous times, it was believed that voice hearing was caused by spirits or devils that possessed the victims. Nowadays, this is still believed in some cultures. But in our modern Western society, other explanations are also fervently supported, like oversensitivity to certain chemicals in food or in the environment. Stories of voice hearing date back to ancient Greece, Egypt, and the early Christian cultures. In Greece, there were several oracles that shared the messages from the gods. Until the 18th century, the voice hearing experience was seen as something divine rather than an illness or disorder. The psychiatrist Eugen Bleuler introduced the concept of schizophrenia to psychiatry. Because of the fact that people categorize, and that psychiatry is a part of the modern Western society, voice hearing is often categorized as an illness. Still, in different cultures, for example in parts of Africa and Asia, it's more accepted. The categorizing that happens everywhere with anything is logical. This is a way to understand all the different things that are going on in the world. The stereotyping makes it easier to navigate. So, if we take it from there, our need to categorize, it's logical that we classify people that hear voices in a certain way. We see them as voice hearers or even just schizophrenics. In this, it's very important to keep in mind that a person is always more than a stereotype. There's never only one box you can be put in. So think of other boxes you can be put in. For instance, you are male, single, a dog lover, you drink, you don't smoke, etc. The list can be endless. Have you ever thought about the fact that some of the greatest people in history also heard voices? Like Sigmund Freud, Jeanne d'Arc, Carl Jung, William Blake, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Socrates, Jesus, Muhammad, Joseph Smith, George Fox, Moses, and Anthony Hopkins.